I go to Chodesh Adar. Chodesh Adar, Aleph Dar. Aleph Dar, you ever heard that? Aleph Dar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives. Because in Chodesh Adar is always Parshas Truma Tetzaveh, Kisisa Vayakel. Is always the Parshias of the building of the Mishkan, the home, the Kaviyachal, Hashem's home. Like Ani Dar, Anoichi Dar. This is where I live, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. The question is what that has to do with Chodesh Adar, and what that has to do with Purim that we're waiting so anxiously for, and what that has to do with us, even more importantly, the Mishkan of 3,337 years ago. The Aron HaKodesh that was in the Kodesh HaKodashim had a kapeiros on it, which was a cover, a thick cover, a tefach thick. And coming out, growing out of the kapeiros, were two gold kruvim with wings. And the kruvim, the faces of the kruvim, were the faces of children, the Gemara says in Chagiga. Where do you see that in the word kruv? So the Gemara says in Chagiga, in the second parak, kruv is kiravia, like a child. A ravia is a child. Shekain bebavel, kairin liyanuka ravia. In Bavel, they call a child a ravia. It's interesting that on top of the Aron are two kruvim, one which represents Klal Yisrael, and one which represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the name of those two kruvim are like a child. It's interesting. And someone once pointed out that usually when you have such a thing in Aramaic word, it says Shekain ba'aramis kairin liyanuka ravia. But over here it doesn't say that. It says Shekain bebavel. Yeah, it's true. Bavel is where you speak Aramaic. That is true. But it's interesting that the lashon of the Gemara was not that in Aramaic a child is called a ravia, but in Bavel, in the place Bavel, a child is called a ravia. Why the change in language? Shekain bebavel. Also interesting, speaking of Adar, interesting that the halachos of the type of hashras hashchina that we enjoy today, the hashras hashchina in our shuls and batei knesiyos and batei midrashos, which mesechta has the halachos of batei knesiyos and batei midrashos? Megillah. Sechta Megillah. That's where the dinim of a beis haknesses are. Are you allowed to, all the dinim, what are you allowed to sell, and what are you allowed to use, and where are you allowed to run in a beis haknesses? Are you allowed to use it as a shortcut? All of the halachas of this makkah mikdash called the beis haknesses are in Masechta Megillah. Coincidence? That it happens to be the month of Purim is the month of the Mishkan, and the Masechta of Purim is the Masechta of the Makim of the Shechina? That's a coincidence, you think? Unbelievable. What's going on? There's a message here. There's something for us to understand. What's the message here to us? What is the Torah trying to tell us? The Torah says, Pasuk says, the Gemara brings in Megillah on Daf Chavtes Amud Aleph, a Pasuk that says, V'ehi lohem mikdash ma'at ba'aratzos asher hayu sham. I will be for them a small mikdash in the lands that they are there. And the Gemara says, you know what that's talking about? Elu batei knesiyos ubatei midrashos shebebavel. Those are the shuls and the batei medrash in Bavel. That's what Hashem says. I will be a mikdash ma'at. And the secret of what's going on here is that later on, in Parashas Pekudei, the Mishkan is called the Mishkan Ha'edus. It's a Mishkan which testifies. It testifies about the relationship between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Chazal say even after the Chet HaEgel, because according to many, the Mishkan was a kapara for the Chet HaEgel. It testified that even after the Chet HaEgel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael still had a relationship That's the Mishkan Ha'edus. You've heard the phrase Mishkan Ha'edus? Have you ever heard of Mikdash Ha'edus? The Beis HaMikdash is Edus? You ever heard that phrase? You ever heard that the Beis HaMikdash is a Beis HaMikdash Ha'edus? No. Doesn't say anywhere Mikdash Ha'edus. Just Mishkan Ha'edus. Why? You know why? Because the Beis HaMikdash was in one holy place. That's not what the Edus of the Mishkan is. The Edus of the Mishkan is that wherever you go, I will be with you. That was the Mishkan, which traveled from place to place. Masa after masa, vayisu vayachanu, vayisu vayachanu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, wherever you travel, I am coming with you. That's why the Mishkan is a Mishkan Ha'edus. And that's why that Edus travels even to our Batei Knesiyas and Batei Midrashos. Bavel represents the Yishuv of Torah outside of Eretz Yisrael. We're also in Bavel, figuratively speaking. Bavel is the Makom Torah of outside Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem says, Va'ehi lahem mikdash ma'at. You're in Bavel? I'm in Bavel too. You're in Galus? I'm in Galus too. You're in a far-flung across the ocean, the land of the Indians, in the United States of America? I'll be there too. You're in the far-flung corners of the earth, from Melbourne, Australia, to Waterbury, Connecticut, just to pick a random place. I will be there too. Va'ehi lahem mikdash ma'at. That's all part of the Edus, of the Mishkan Ha'edus. The Ravya, the child, a child is completely dependent on his parents. And the parents are completely attuned to the child. You could be at a Suda, and there's 5 couples that are sitting by the Suda, eating the Suda's Shabbos Kodesh together. And one of those couples has a baby sleeping in a bedroom, a flight up. And they're talking loud. The men are talking to the men, and the women are talking to the women, and they're sharing Divrei Torah, and they're sharing recipes. And it's loud, you could hear a rumble from the room. And suddenly one of the women says, "Is that the baby?" And you're like, no, there's no, I'm sorry, nothing. "Oh yes it is, it's the baby. I can hear it. My baby needs me. She's out of there. My baby needs me." That's the relationship between a baby and a parent. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that's our relationship. Kiravia, like a child. That you could call out to me. You can depend on me. You can cry to me. Mishkan Ha'edus. I will always be there. Wherever you go and wherever you cry, I will be there. Shekain beBavel. Because in Bavel, that place outside of Eretz Yisrael, they call a Yanuka a Ravya. And I'm using the words the way they do it in Bavel, because Bavel represents even when you're away from home. Even when you're away from our little home in Eretz Yisrael. Even when you're in Bavel, I'm still going to be there for you. Mishkan Ha'edus, the halachas of Beis HaKnesses. Elu Batei Knesiyos Shebe Bavel. These are the Batei Knesiyos of Bavel. The Nes of Purim is the only Nes from all of the Yomim Tovim, including Chanukah, which took place. It's a yontif that we have from a miracle that took place when there was no Beis HaMikdash, when we were not in a matzav of Geula. Pesach was a matzav of Geula, and Shavuos was a matzav of Geula, and Sukkot was a matzav of Geula, and Chanukah is a matzav of Geula, and Yom Kippur is a matzav of Geula. But Purim, Akate Avdei Da'achashverosh Anan. We remain servants to Achashverosh. Sounds like a downer, right? Akate Avdei Da'achashverosh Anan. And certainly in the Pashut Pshat it is. But in the deeper Pshat, how phenomenal is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you could be in Galus. It could seem like the darkest times. It could be times where it's hard to stay attached to Torah. It could be times of massive nisyonos. It could be times of overt anti-Semitism where people can get away with the most disgusting and overt bittul of the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. And I will be there. And Nisim will happen even then, even in Galus. And the Yantif of Purim is the Yantif that tells us Shchinta begalusa, that the Shechina is with us in Galus, even in Paras Umadai, even in Galus, even between the Batei Mikdash, when there was no Beis HaMikdash, Mishkan HaEdos, the Eidos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, even when there is no Beis HaMikdash, even when we're not in Eretz Yisrael, even when we're in Bavel, Kiravia, Shekein Bavel, Kairin Liyanuka, Ravia. And that's why Dafka in Masechta Megillah, the Masechta which has the halachos of the Yantif, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that He's there when we were so far from home, we have the mitzvahs of the Beis HaKnesses, which shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us even when we're so far from home. That even our shul here in Queens, even our Beis Medrash has the Shechina in it. And that's why Dafka, during Adar, we learn about the Mishkan. We don't learn about the Beis HaMikdash necessarily, even though some of the Haftarahs reference the Beis HaMikdash. We learn about the Mishkan HaEdos. The Mishkan HaEdos, that's the Mishkan of Chodesh Adar. And that's why I'm so excited to say Agutn Chodesh Adar. It's not quite Adar yet, but it's coming. It's that time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals that He's with us, even in the darkest times. And I want to tell you something about the miracle of Purim. The Sfarim HaKadoshim say that the Yom Tov of Purim becomes holier each year. It becomes greater each year. Because as the whole idea of Purim is that wherever you are, in whatever far-flung corner of the earth you are, or whatever far-flung corner of the complex twists and turns of our personality you might find yourself, I will be there with you. I'm not leaving you. And that means that as the Golus gets longer, Purim gets stronger. And as the Golus gets darker, La Yehudim Haisa Oira, Purim gets brighter. The power of Purim is that as deep as we may sink, as far as we may travel, as confused as we may be, the light of Purim is here to take us home. And that's the godless of Purim, and that's why we should be revving ourselves up for an unbelievable month of appreciating Siyata Dishmaya. And this is just the beginning. The whole concept of Purim is interwoven with the concept of the Mishkan. And there's references, if you follow the Megillah, you'll smell Mishkan everywhere. So let's take that with us and let's embrace the month of Adar as the place of Dira, the place that shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. Let's get busy preparing for Purim the way B'nai Torah prepare for Purim, which means that we learn Megillas Esther, and we learn Masechta Megillah, and we learn Hilchas Megillah, and we get involved in the Torah of Purim and in the excitement of Purim. That's where we get our Yanika from. And then we continue to develop ourselves as B'nai Torah and to walk the fine line of finding our way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that next year on Purim we will have the zechus to be able to appreciate the Siyata Dishmaya that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with us in Galus. That when we were in Bavel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with us, and we could take that unbelievable Hashgacha and Siyata Dishmaya with us back to Eretz Yisrael b'mheira v'yameinu yashakayach.